Folks, good afternoon. Welcome again to Legacy Men's Podcast 2025. My name is Gary Trevor, and my co-host is Jason Gonzalez. And we are both tickled pink, as we say back home, to have Todd McIntyre, a pastor, men's pastor for 30 years, married for 31 years to a wonderful wife called Debbie, 3 wonderful children, and currently living in Atlanta, Georgia.
That's right.
And we're so glad to have you.
Yeah.
Welcome, Todd McIntyre.
Yeah, just one correction. It wasn't 30 years as a men's pastor. Actually, only the last 15. So
Nice.
the first 15 was with kids and youth of
Even
all
better.
places. Yeah.
All right,
So,
I like it.
Yeah.
It's
great
stuff.
Yes.
the training,
yes,
the training ground.
Yes.
All right. Well, hey, I wanted to thank you again for stopping by here at the Legacy Men's Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us. We're there on Spotify and YouTube, so you can visually see us, and or you can listen in on your drive to and from work. Here's where we learn how to live and leave a godly legacy. So, Todd McIntyre,
Yes.
we're going to be here talking about masculinity.
Mhm.
It's something that you've taught on a lot, but you also have a book. Could you kind of walk us through the book?
Yeah, man. I started doing men's ministry about 15 years ago, really coming out of doing children and youth ministry. I had a business that I ran out of Arizona called Big Mouth Presentations of all things. And so we helped the governor of Arizona create a character education philosophy in Arizona, which actually took off. We ended up doing this across the country. And it was going really well until 2008, 2009. And
Yep.
God shut that thing down. The schools couldn't pay us. We were all foreclosing on our homes around here. And then I got a job. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I went and got a job. And I got a job at a church, and they wanted me to run the men's ministry. And I had no idea how to run a men's ministry. I had no idea what it was supposed to look like, smell like, taste like, anything. And they let me study for 9 months. And one of the things I realized is there is a crisis in the church for men.
Amen.
Most churches, I don't know if you know this, they don't. Only 10% of churches will have anything to do with men's ministry or men's movement. And so, the reason is because men just don't show up, and they won't be a part of that. And so we started studying it, trying to figure it out. And masculinity became the key piece, which we didn't know at the time. But we had a psychologist kind of help us walk through why men do what they do.
Yeah.
And it really was a key for us to open up the doors. At the time, we would try to do a conference. We'd have about 900 guys come to the conference, which seems like a pretty good thing.
Yeah.
But our church was 14,000 people.
Yeah.
And we were able to grow that thing at its height. It was hitting about 5,500 guys coming on 2 weeks. We had to do it 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
And God just started moving. We had about 2,000 guys in discipleship. We had 62 softball teams. We had golf leagues. We had basketball leagues, football leagues.
That's all here.
Men
AZ?
doing stuff. That was actually in Dallas.
That was in Dallas. All
Yeah.
right.
At a church called
Cool.
Gateway Church.
All right.
And that men's ministry went on until this year with a couple falls of pastors. You know how it is in this day and age. And but it was awesome. It's a great time. Then I moved to Victory Church in Atlanta in 2020. And we've started this movement there in Atlanta. And so we're seeing a lot of guys get connected right now, and it's super exciting. And I really do believe we're about to hit a movement of men that are going to not tolerate the things of this world like they used to.
Yeah.
And they're going to go after God like we've never seen before. And I think we're about to sense and see something we've never seen before in the church.
Todd, hit us with these numbers, because I mean, some of these are outlandish, right? It's like when you factor these things in, the percentages of men not following Christ and not having that in their homes, what that looks like for kids that may not end up following Christ. And then I think you even mentioned some things about retention, like men that versus women that attend church and what that looks like. It's just,
I mean, across the board, it's a 20-80 split. 80% of people who serve in church are usually women, 20% usually men. Here's the stat that got me, though. This is the stat in 2010 when I was studying this. It was out of a website called menscatalyst.org. And the stat said this, that when a child gets saved first, which you got to remember, I was a children's and youth pastor for 15 years and did that work for 15 years, thought it was the work to do. I got to get the kids before they get older because we can catch them early, we'll save them. They said there's a 3% chance, 3.5% chance you'll reach the rest of the family if you can reach the kid, which I'm like, that's not very good.
Yeah.
They said if you reach the mom, there's a 17% chance. And you think about this, every church in the world is good with children, youth, and women.
Yep.
We're awesome at that. You just tell the women we're doing something, they all show up, and they love it, right?
Yeah.
Men, if you reach the dad first, there's a 93% chance you reach the rest of the family.
Yeah,
and when I heard that, it was game on. It's like, okay, we've got to figure this thing out. And what I was doing, honestly, guys, because nobody was doing it, I was trying to find guys who were trying to do it and just get them in a room and go, let's think about this. I mean, if NASA can get us to the moon with less computer equipment than you have on your iPhone, why can't we reach men for God?
Yeah.
And so I just realized there had to be a way to do this. And which is funny, I'm going to tell you something that you'll probably hate because you guys are in a men's ministry kind of a feel, but I really don't believe men's ministry works. I believe God's called us not to treat men like youth, where we have a Wednesday night youth service, but we are supposed to create a movement of men that are discipled and that are leading in every area of the church. Men need to be helping with the children, need to be helping with the youth, need to be helping on Sunday mornings, need to be helping in every area, because when a man gets connected to the church, it's lights out. What was really cool at Gateway, where I was for 10 years, when I started, there was about a 24% of the volunteers were men. When I left, it was about 43% of the volunteers were men. 2 years after I left, so I left it with guys to run it, which is interesting. They were all businessmen. None of them were paid. 2 years after I left, there was a 51% of the volunteers at that church. Now, this is a church of 32,000 people.
So let's just come in there and say, so then how did you motivate, obviously in a subtle way, those men to get involved in children's ministry and all the rest of the ministries in the church? What was the technique? What was the magic sauce, so to speak, that really drew the men across the board?
There's a couple things. I mean, I could tell you a lot of things. There's a lot of one-liners I could give you. The philosophy that we used came from a guy named Billy Graham. So Billy Graham is a sex psychologist. We were doing the youth group for men for the first year I was there. I was responsible for the message. I was responsible for putting together the questions at the end where the table guys would get together and ask the group about the table. What was interesting about these 9 months, I did a little study in 4-month time. We had 500 guys come to that one time and never come back. So we were averaging 180 guys at that weekly meeting. And by the way, it was 3 weekly meetings. It was Wednesday night, Thursday morning, and Saturday morning. We were hustling, trying to get these guys. Still, only 186 guys average attendance. 500 showed up, never came back. And you would see it. They'd be at the table, and the guy would be asking questions. And this guy would be crying because he just repented of pornography, or he's getting a divorce with his wife, or something bad's happening. And then he would bawl, and we'd all be like, God's moving at the table. Look at this. This is awesome. And he would never show up again. And there was something about that just almost made him afraid to be that vulnerable and to go there. And so this guy, Billy Graham, we brought in because I didn't want to preach that week. And so he comes in and he flips the table and he talks about masculinity. And I had never heard a talk on masculinity in my life. I don't know too many people who preach on this.
Nope, you're the first time.
And he actually said how a man who is going to be a healthy masculine man, how he grows up, and what are the kind of the benchmarks he's supposed to hit if he's going to make it to that last role. He actually talked about women too and how they mature and how they grow into their walk. But one of the things he said, and these are the 2 words we use a lot, and this is in the book. And the book is called, by the way, The Lost Treasure of Masculinity, because I really do believe it's a treasure we have to find, that God wants us to find. But he said from birth to 5, if a man's going to be a healthy masculine man, he used 2 words, direct and indirect. He said from birth to 5, he has a direct relationship with mama, which means mom takes care of all of his needs, emotional, physical, just a direct relationship. When he hits 5 or 6, he starts separating from mom and starts getting into the world of the indirect, which the indirect is really healthy for a boy during that time frame. It's when he learns about competition. He learns about everything's black and white. Like there's rules to everything, and you got to play by the rules. And it's all about me being a part of the game, not just a part of the team, but I'm an active participant that's making the team win. He's always constantly trying to be that kid. It's when he's taking guns and learning how to shoot the bad guys. It's when he's learning video games, when he's learning how to play sports. And he said during this time, and what's crazy about during this time, a lot of our social, I don't know, the world today, if you will, we hate to see kids not get a trophy. We hate to see kids lose. We hate to see kids not get that participation trophy. So now everybody gets a trophy. And he says that's the one thing that will really emasculate that boy. Because when everybody wins, nobody wins.
Correct.
And losing is such a huge part during that season of his life, because losing teaches you how to make adjustments. And losing in a game at 8 years old, 9 years old, doesn't really matter. But losing at 30 years old, losing your wife, losing your job, it matters.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't know how to make adjustments, and he learns those adjustments in that time frame, he's stunted. He said most of the people who deal with pornography, who struggle with sexual addictions or sexual identity, didn't have a good, healthy, indirect world between 6 and 12. I thought that was interesting.
Very.
Very interesting. Yeah. But he said once you hit 12, it kind of flips. Now for women, he said from birth to 12, and I'm saying really puberty, they live in a direct world. So direct, what is that? That's all about who you are, your emotions, your spirituality, your family, togetherness. And it's real important for women. My girls loved playing sports. They were very competitive, but they loved playing on the team. My son loved playing sports, but it was about him. You know, I think about like sports right now. Don't get me wrong, I love the Dallas Cowboys. We're struggling right now. And I don't care who's on the Cowboys. I just want the Cowboys to get the best players.
Right.
I want players from other teams on the Cowboys team because I want my team to do well. But for women, it's not like that. It's about the player. It's about the team.
The individual.
Yeah, and so if you want your wife to like your team, get her to like the people on the team, and she'll start liking your team. But guys, we're not like that. We just want to win. But anyways, he says from birth to puberty for women, it's all about the direct, who you are versus what you do. And for men, it's all about the indirect from 6 to 13. It's about what you do, not who you are. And then he said at 13, it flips for both of them. So now puberty to death, if you're going to be a healthy masculine man, it's no longer just about what you do and how you do it, but it's about who you are. And it's about your emotions, your spirituality, your vulnerability. And if you can't learn to be vulnerable, if you can't learn to tap into that, then you're never really going to learn how to be the mature man you want to be, and you'll never feel your true masculinity. Now, it's okay to do good. It's okay to be good at what you do. A lot of men don't like to come to church, and the reason they don't like to come to church is because most of our churches are dealing with the spiritual elements of life. It's a church, right?
Sure. Yeah.
We're going to talk about emotions. We're going to talk about marriage. We're going to talk about kids. We're going to talk about things that aren't familiar to an indirect guy who is about doing his job. He's a Marine. Yeah. He's great with stocks. He knows how to be. He knows what it's like to be a doctor and to fix someone and take them apart and put them back together. Right. He's good at what he does, but it doesn't mean he's good at who he is.
Correct.
And that's the piece that God wants to shift.
So, but here's my question as well. So, as important as the father is to the daughter, how much more important is the father from 13 till death to the son is?
It's huge.
That the father's really involved. And how do you get men off the ledge of, well, I got to make $200,000. I got to make the money right now. So I'll see you later. I'll see you later. Yeah. Unlike our team here, really focuses on the family while making a good job.
Yeah. Agreed. Now it's super important because if your son doesn't see that transition, he'll never make that transition. Your son's going to do what you do, not what you say. So you can say all along, don't do this, don't do that. Yep. But if you're doing those things, if you're not engaged, if you're not pressing in, then he's going to see that. And one of the best things I could give to my son, who's now 23, is that he saw me going after God. He saw me going after my wife. He saw me going after the things of the heart and going to counseling, going to get help, getting coaches in my life to kind of help me through things. And I believe that spoke louder to him than me telling him, do your homework. Me telling him, don't do this, don't go stay out late at night. I didn't have to do that with him because he saw me doing what God was calling me to do.
On the other side of it is, if a father is not a participant, is there an influence of the feminine side being pushed into the son via the mom? Because my father was absent.
Yes.
And my mother was very present.
Yes.
So how do you get that dichotomy to be fixed?
Yeah, obviously we have a lot of broken people in our society.
Correct.
And broken people are going to create broken lives. We're all broken, right? Let's just get it on the table. Romans 3 says we're all falling short. So nobody's better than anybody. But the truth is, the more broken you are, the more broken things are going to be.
Right.
And I do think it affects the family. You can look at any stat, whether it's juvenile detentions, whether it's men in prison. I'm sure you've heard the Hallmark story where they wanted to give a Mother's Day card to the guys, and about 98% of the guys took a Mother's Day card, took it from Hallmark, wrote a card, and gave it to their moms. It was super successful. So Father's Day, they said they'll do the same thing. And nobody took a card because the relationship between the dad and that guy was broken. And this is what we're finding in our society. If there's a 93% chance we can reach the rest of the family because the dad gets saved or goes after God, how much more does the enemy not want to take out the leader?
Yeah.
You were in the military. You understand this. You take the leader out, you take the whole
Absolutely.
group out, right?
Yeah.
So if we can take the
water
man
away.
out,
Take
right,
the water away.
That's right. We're
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
And so, again, game on.
Yeah.
Like, we have to get good at this.
Yeah. This is where, like, I love that you talked about spiritual fitness, but
Yeah.
you also talked about every one of us struggles with sin. And you said this time and time and again with almost every single time that you've taught. You talk about that because I think, like, to your point, right?
Yeah.
What we do for a living and how we do it, to the caliber that we do it, we're always shining, right?
Yeah.
Like we're our own hero in our story,
Yeah.
right? We're playing that over and over again. So when we come into church and the light is turned on to the things that we're not doing well, then it's like, oh man, those are all my sins. Like, what do I do with this, right? It's like, it's time to get spiritually fit.
Yeah. So I would say
know?
masculinity is a skill set you have to learn. You have to grow into.
Yes.
We were just talking earlier before the podcast about doing pull-ups. It's my kryptonite.
Right.
Pull-ups are my kryptonite. So I always stay away from them because I feel like a loser
Yeah.
when I get to the pull-up bar. I don't want anyone seeing me going, struggling
Forward,
to get
forward
up there.
grip
Right.
or under grip. You know?
Yeah, exactly. I want to do these as tight as I can. I just did 15. Because no guy likes to lose.
Right.
So the adjustments we usually make in life when we're losing is we just quit. We quit.
Yep.
Instead of fighting through and trying to go, okay, I told my wife 2025 is going to be the year of the pull-ups for me. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure out how to do pull-ups in a way that I don't feel like a loser when I go to the gym. Well, that's a skill set I had to learn. Spiritual fitness is the same thing.
Yeah.
You have to learn to get spiritually fit. When I read the Bible when I was a kid, my brother's coming to the conference tonight. We're going to have tonight. And the memory I have of my brother, he's 5 years older than me. We used to share a room. Every night he read the Bible before he went to bed. I was going to bed. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like that was his discipline that he had. But it made a lasting impression on me. But when I would read the Bible, it was like eating broccoli. It was like, I would rather have a hamburger. You know, I'd rather watch a movie, do my thing. And I had to almost create an appetite for it until I saw the value in it. I couldn't see I didn't know what the value was. I didn't understand that Jesus was the Word. And when I read it and pray it, He's literally getting inside me and changing me from the inside out. I didn't get any of that when I was younger. I didn't get what fasting meant.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that when you deny yourself from food, that you're literally preparing yourself from saying no to your flesh and yes to God.
Right.
And there's a power in that most guys don't get. I didn't get that. And so I didn't fast. I didn't pray. I didn't get that I should get up early and spend time with God and not just rush it while I'm driving to work and hopefully I can just check off the box and get it done so I can do my religious activity. That God wanted to spend time with me and connect with me. And in that process of spending time with God, it was going to do something to my being.
Yeah.
It would change who I was, not just what I did. And I didn't realize how much of a masculinity issue it was going to cause.
The one thing we loved is we all have blind spots.
Oh, yeah.
Male and female.
Oh, yeah.
There's two questions here. So how do you help men learn they've got blind spots? It's like cars do. And then basically, how have you kept your men staying the course, not just coming to tick a box, but are actually involved in the church and growing as an individual?
Yeah. Well, one, you've got to get them together. So working out together, you're going to grow a lot faster than by yourself.
Right.
Doing anything together with other guys, you're going to grow a lot faster. So we got to build that camaraderie, that team, right? So that's important. But two, I really do feel like you have to display it yourself. Like it has to exude out of you. Wherever you go, it has to be who you are. I was with a guy the other day. We're at the gym. He's sitting on the treadmill. He's talking to me about an issue. I didn't even ask. I just started praying out loud on the treadmill for he and I. And I'm praying out loud, and all of a sudden he's like, oh, we're praying. So he starts like agreeing with me in prayer. You know, I'm out loud. I don't care who hears me. And as we're praying,
awesome.
it's like gelling in his heart.
Right.
He hadn't heard my spiritual fitness podcast that I did. And so I gave him the spiritual fitness podcast last week, and he was telling me this Monday when we were at the gym, why doesn't everybody do this? Why don't we all do this?
Yeah.
Well, because we don't know. No one's trained us. I was telling a guy the other day, we were sitting down across from the table, and I said, I'm not telling you I fast and pray and I do these things so that you look at me and go, oh, he's strong. The truth is, the reason I do those things is because I'm weak, because I know I will fail, and not because I'm strong. But I said, I want you to know that it's possible. That's what I'm telling you. The 4-minute mile, there was 3 guys, I don't know if you know this, there were 3 guys trying to break the 4-minute mile.
I love this, yeah.
And they couldn't do it. They said it was impossible. So they had people helping them. They were actually medical doctors in college trying to figure this thing out. And they couldn't figure out how to break the 4-minute mile until one guy, I believe it was in England, He breaks the 4-minute mile. There's another guy in Australia, another guy somewhere else. When they heard he broke it, within 2 weeks they broke it. Because now it's possible.
Yeah.
And there's got to be a mindset of possibility that we got to teach our guys.
We're talking about so Roger Bannister.
Yes, that's who it
That's
is. Yes.
And it's
I'm glad you knew his name.
oh man, I get the chills off that because that one's in my like motivational speeches when I'm at the gym, and it's even the fact that high schoolers were also able to accomplish it.
Yes.
So it's like the masses, right, start to believe.
Yes.
Right. So it doesn't matter what age and
That's
all
right.
of that. And I wanted to kind of go back to Gary's point because this is so good. There are so many broken homes, and so it's like, well, easy for you to say.
Yeah.
Right. Like my dad left when I was young.
Yeah.
Right. Like my dad didn't. He was around, but
For a lot of men,
he
that's
wasn't
true.
as engaged,
Yeah.
right? And so we've had our times of reconciliation where we talk about, hey, Dad, like, yeah, it hurt because you had 2 jobs and you had AA, and I didn't really have time with you.
Yeah.
That was hurtful.
Yeah.
And so I still have my dad to have those discussions.
Yeah.
Some men have never talked to their father again. They're not around.
Yeah.
They completely were
Or
abandoned.
they're gone. They're dead.
And, you know, that's where the Heavenly Father comes in.
Amen.
And that happens a lot through exactly what you're talking about, surrounding yourself with other men. So where does that come into play where you've seen that, where it works, where it's like, gosh, okay, maybe I can change this dynamic? Because although I didn't have a father that instilled this, I don't have to be part of that statistic.
Yeah. Well, I would say this. You can't learn how to be a man from a woman. You can learn how to be a man from a man.
Right.
You also can't keep blaming everybody for your mistakes.
Absolutely.
So as long as I need my dad to fix him in order for me to be okay, I'm always going to be messed up.
Yep.
So there has to come a time in your life where you finally go, okay, my dad is human. My dad was a human just like I'm a human. He made a lot of mistakes. I'm making a lot of mistakes. What I find most of the time, the guys who are so angry with their dad is they become their dad. So they're making the same mistakes dad made, and they're just
such a good point.
they're just going through life acting like, well, they're a victim, so it's okay. So I would say this to anyone: if someone has to change for you to change, we've got a problem.
Yep.
But I would say if you will take responsibility for you and why you do what you do, even if why you do what you do was because of your dad and maybe he taught you some wrong things, take responsibility to grow.
Yeah.
Take responsibility to go, you know what, I don't have to stay like this. We've all know the stories of the person that was completely overweight who lost weight. We all know the stories of the guy who couldn't walk that now walks. We all know the story of that guy who hurt his knee in a football game and 1 year later he's making touchdowns again. We all know that story, but what we don't see in the story is the work they put into to get there.
Right.
And the training they went through. And they were willing to go, you know what, I'm going to take responsibility for this. I'm not going to blame and just quit.
Right.
And this is the thing I think the enemy wants to do for guys. He wants to get us in a quitting mentality.
Yep.
So if he can get you to quit because of all the problems you had or dads you didn't have or people you didn't have or mentors you didn't have, if he can get you to quit, he's got you. So someone's going to have to finally say, let's break this cycle.
One of the biggest things I think with men, Jason and I talk about all the time, to find that guy that you can really work with, the trust factor. So how have you encouraged men throughout your 15 years to find, like we said, like-minded people? So we're working with each other's positive stuff to really grow away from what was troubling us before, no matter what that was. The trust factor is so key.
Huge.
It's the same thing. I served in the military overseas, but we're in joint forces, and we're always small teams.
Yes.
But we trusted each other 100%.
Yes.
I had your back.
Yes.
So how have you cloned that within the church that you got away from these meetings, which I love, and now you have all these men? How have you developed that comradeship and that trust factor, like an umbilical cord within these men that have now grown them so strongly?
So we do have small groups, and we are big on small groups. Whether it's men, women, or marriage, we want to have small groups. In the small groups, it's important that we have the right guys. Now, let me just say this. The wrong guys are going to hurt you.
Oh, yeah.
The right guys are going to help you. So you're going to have to decide right now, where are you weak, and get around people who are strong in the areas you're not strong in. I mean, that makes sense, right?
Sure.
If you want to be a golfer, a good golfer, go to someone who's better at you than you and have them teach you. So you got to go seek it out. You can't just wait for this thing to pop up, or the church is supposed to do this for you. You got to go seek it out. The guy who trained me in spiritual fitness was actually through a CD. His name was Rice Brooks. And the last thing he said in the CDs, which I'll never forget, he said, find out who you admire the most spiritually, find out what they do spiritually, and beat them. And I remember when he said that.
That's awesome.
So there's a guy down the street from here. His name is Mike Gowans. He was the guy that handed me the CDs, and I went to him. I said, "What do you do?" So he starts giving me the list of the spiritual disciplines he does, and I wrote them all down. And I walked out. He goes, "Where are you going?" I go, "I'm going to go beat you."
Yeah.
And I did. I literally
It's time to train.
In fact, I told him, "I'm still beating you. I'm still going to beat you." Because in my mind, if he's doing what I want, let's find out what he does. So let's go get it. So you have to. I can't give this to a guy.
Yep.
In fact, there's a lot of times I walk away from guys because what they want me to do is give them permission to be
correct.
Stupid.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say it. The Bible says if you don't like correction, you're going to be stupid. So I can't be around every guy just because they want me to mentor them. Because if they're not willing to do the thing, to come to practice, if you will, if you won't come to practice, I can't help you. So when we set the bar like that, it kind of raises the tone in the whole church. So when the people around the church are going, "Wow, that's you really broke the 4-minute mile. It's possible."
Right.
Okay, show me.
Yep.
And if they're really serious, I'll show them.
Yeah. It's surrounding yourself with wisdom too, because the Bible talks about it in Proverbs like over and over again.
And here's what's cool. Because I don't chase after guys.
Yeah.
It's almost like that thing that you can't have, you want.
Yep.
So I've told a lot of guys, "Hey, I'm never going to meet with you again. No offense, but you don't want this." And sometimes I'll see them switch. Sometimes I'll see them just walk out. I have to go after the guys that want to go after this and let the rest do what they do.
Here's the thing which we just talked about before you came on the air. So we're going to sin, right? So how do you convey to the men that even though you sin, you pick yourself back up again, you ask for God's forgiveness, and you keep moving on? If it's a continual sin, then we got to deal with that problem and then get some counsel.
Yes.
So how do you convey to men that I'm going to mess up? You cannot be perfect. It's physically impossible.
Impossible.
But if I fall, what do I do?
Yeah, I was just talking to a guy about this the other day because we were talking about. He was asking me about same question, and I said I coached my son in baseball. When he was 7, he wasn't very good. In fact, the first time we played catch, it was right over here in Chandler. I threw the ball at him and it hit his teeth and knocked 2 teeth out. First practice, he's crying. He's like, "I want to go home." I'm like, "You can't go home. The team's coming. You're going to stay here. You got to finish this."
Don't tell him what I did.
Yeah. Don't tell Mom. But but here's the deal. He made a ton of mistakes. And I just kept hitting him the ball. And I never said, "You idiot. How come you don't know how to do this?" God's never going to say to us, "You idiot." He's our coach, right? He's going to just keep hitting the ball. And if you're a good coach, you expect them to make mistakes. And you expect to be the coach that's going to train them how to do it well. God is a good coach.
He is.
He knows you're going to make mistakes. He knows you're making mistakes. He said, "While you were still a sinner, I died for you." He knew you were screwed up. He knew I was screwed up. When I gave my life to Jesus, I didn't come clean. I wish I did. My wife wishes I did, but I didn't. So all those things that I had to go through was practice, where he was just kept hitting me the ball and saying, "Do it right. Do it again. Do it again. Do it again."
Share with us, because I just listened to you. You were very gracious in sending me the Audible on your book, Lost Treasure of Masculinity. Share with us kind of snippets from the book that I think, because for one, here's the thing. So Todd he's written the book. He does the narration. After each chapter, he does like a mini podcast with one of his engineers, Mike. And they have some very pertinent questions that are so relative to that chapter that makes you stop and think. But it's so, when I started, I had to finish the book. So it was, you guys have got to get the book. And it's in the Audible version. It's just brilliant. So help kind of share about some highlights of that book, Todd.
I would say it was when I was 30 years old. This maybe not all in the book. Some of this is in the book. But when I was 30 years old, I had a moment in my life where I thought, I'm going to be like Jesus. I'm going to fast. I'm going to fast for 40 days. And I remember...
For 40 days. Wow.
40 days. I did this 40-day fast. Now, I was doing the shakes. I was liquid, so it wasn't a full fast.
So you're on isogenics.
I guess. I don't even know what that is, but that sounds right. But I wasn't eating. Let's just say I wasn't eating any food. So I want to keep it real.
Beach body.
Thank you. So at the end of it, I remember going to the mailbox. And I was just walking the mail. I felt this thought in my head that God was speaking to me, saying, "Since you finished this, I'm now going to train you." And I thought, it's going to be awesome. Probably I'm going to be famous. Probably I'm going to make some money. Probably I'm going to get this, get that, whatever. And really what he did is he started exposing my sin. One of the first things that happened is I was struggling with lust, struggling with pornography. And the internet just barely came out. So I wasn't even versed in it. I just found out where you can find things and let's go, this is awesome. It's free. You have to go buy a magazine. So I remember I would do that, I would confess to my wife, do that, confess to my wife, do that, confess to my wife. I probably did that 30 times. And one time she decided, I'm going to go on the history and see what it looked like. I didn't even know there was a history. That's how dumb I was with the internet. Yeah. So glad she did, and so embarrassed that she did. Because when she saw what I looked at, it's completely different than when she heard what I looked at. And when she saw it, she brought me in the next day, and she was very matter of fact. She said, if you continue to do that, you're going to have to find another place to live. And I was just shocked. And it was that day that I met this guy, Bob Dunn, who goes to your church. So I'm going to count him out. But Bob didn't know the conversation I just had with my wife. We met at Starbucks. He was a youth pastor. I was an ex-youth pastor. We were just friends. He throws me a book, Every Man's Battle. And Every Man's Battle was a book I just ate up, and it really deals with that issue.
Brilliant book.
How do you deal with pornography? How do you deal with the mindsets of your life and not looking at things you shouldn't look at and creating a new lifestyle? And so I started going through this process. But I can tell you this, all the things I did that I copied what the book said, I went through other classes I went through one class called Valiant Man, where they taught us how to do certain things just to kind of just retrain your mind, because your mind has been trained to go a certain way, and it's going down a training of death, so training of life. But it wasn't until I started fasting and praying and really praying with my wife, which was 3 years later, that things really started to accelerate, where it still was hard, but it wasn't as hard. And I can tell you, even now, I'm 55. This was 25 years ago. God still has times in me where it's like, okay, don't look there, don't do that. When I'm watching TV, there's certain things I don't do. I don't go to every movie that's out just because there might be sexual explicit things. I don't put myself in a position to fall. And I try everything I can not to put myself in a position to fall. And really, through those things, again, God said he was going to help me. He started exposing my sin. And here's what most guys don't realize. It sounds terrible that God would expose your sin, because nobody wants to get caught and nobody wants to lose. Remember that?
Yep.
But sin is killing you.
Yes, it is.
And sin will always kill.
Yes, it will.
I was talking to a guy last week. He's out of a ministry where the CEO was having an affair with the owner of the business. The owner was the most creative guy he ever knew. They wrote curriculum for the church. And he said when he started having an affair with that CEO, he lost his creativity. The death of his business started at that moment. Wow. He didn't know it. To him, it was just a sexual affair. It was just something he wanted to do. It was something that he thought you could hide and nobody would ever know. But it affects your whole life. And what most men don't realize is sin kills, but it kills everything. It kills relationships, business, family. So God's goal isn't to expose us to hurt us. God's goal is to give us life.
Amen.
And if we aren't willing to do the practice, if we aren't willing to do the spiritual fitness, we aren't willing to do the little things that he's asking us to do and get into his presence and start to learn a new way, that stuff will kill you.
Yeah. A question that really, being a married man like you are for a very long time, share with men, Todd, how you've negotiated through your marriage of 31 years and the struggles you've had. What are some of the key components that men can grab hold of from this podcast to say, let me go to my wife. Let me just be real, like Jason and I talked about, because Jason and I have talked about this. We're like best friends. And no matter where you are in the age bracket, how long you've been married, you have issues, right? They carry over. So how do you retain, and his daughter's been the same thing as well. You were here, you're now here. Share with us some what I call nuggets, Todd.
And I think it's just to add to that, I think it's like we play the victim mentality in our marriage a lot too, right? It's she's doing this, and
so I have the right.
She should be reading my mind because she should know exactly what I want when I want it, and we go into that phase too. So,
Again, victim mentality, and then it gives us an excuse to sin, right? So I would say this: I've had multiple things. I told you a few things. The book, Every Man's Battle, Valiant Man is a class I took. Getting with other men and talking about it. We practice getting direct with men. It sounds crazy. We also practice getting direct with our wives. But some of us who've never done this, I would say practice with guys. Start talking to guys about your sin. Expose it. Guys are a little bit more gracious than your wife because they're not bought into you. They didn't commit their lives to you. So it's a good practice to kind of start in those men's groups. But I would say this, there has to come a time where you can find someone to help you and your wife get through this. Yeah. So Debbie and I, we went through 10 years, what I call marriage coaching. Those 10 years of marriage coaching were men that were speaking into my life with her and giving me drills, if you will, practice drills, things to do to help us grow in our relationship and to get through some deep things. One of the drills he gave us was that every night, this started about 7 years ago, every night we're going to spend 30 minutes a night where I just ask her about her feelings, her heart. We call it heart. It's just your issues in your life. Yeah. And letting her share. And I'm not allowed to complain. I'm not allowed to defend. I'm just here to listen and then just process with her. I can tell you that drill alone has gotten my wife closer than anything we've ever done. And it sounds so minuscule.
But it's huge.
You're just talking. But I'm going to tell you, most men never talk to their wives.
Correct.
Right.
We come home, we go to our man cave, leave me alone, the game's on.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you on Saturday. It's like we don't know how to communicate.
Right.
And we wonder why she doesn't want to have sex. We wonder why she doesn't want to be with us. We wonder 10 years later why she wants to leave because someone at work is talking to her. We wonder all these things because we have just settled for mediocrity in our marriage and we're not fighting for it. Yeah. So 10 years of marriage coaching was tough. And I call it coaching because it sounds better than counseling. Yeah. It was counseling. But I had men in my life, couples in our lives that were better than us, that I said, help me. Help me. I'm bad at this. I'm bad at pull-ups. I got to get better.
Yep. But one of the things as well, Todd, which we've talked about as well, which men, my brother who's just passed, I think men need to convey to their wives that they love them by a touch, by a gentle affirmation, not a grabbing, not a say, let's go and do sex after you've had nothing. How you start your morning is how you end your day, right?
Sure.
So I think also, don't men need to be affirming, instead of running out the door, say, sugar, it's good to see you. I love you dearly. A little kiss can go away, which is affirmation, and you've kind of joined the umbilical cord.
Yeah. So remember we talked about direct and indirect?
Right.
So the indirect says sex. It's what I do. Yeah. When we're doing sex, we must be connecting. We must be good. So that's what we're after. So men are always after the indirect. Again, that's the immaturity of us. Right. So we'll touch them in ways we probably shouldn't touch them. We're always thinking about the next sexual experience we can have. But when you learn about the direct, now you're trying to think about the next emotional experience you can have.
Exactly.
The next spiritual experience you can have. The next talking about the being. My wife and I were on this trip together. We're here in Arizona. We came from Atlanta. We spent a lot of time today just going, I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know what I'm thinking. Let's pray about that. And so we're processing things spiritually and emotionally, which is really the direct side of us because we don't know. And we're trying to tap into God to help us. But I'm telling you, those moments are way more powerful than a sexual moment with your wife.
100%.
Yeah. Now, if you want your wife to have sex with you and enjoy it, there has to be a mental and emotional and spiritual connection that's beyond sex. Yeah. So if you're not willing to go there, you're probably not going to get what you want to get.
Yeah.
And again, what you want to get is immature. What you need to get is mature, which is that direct.
But can you carry indirect and direct as a man and still be masculine?
That's the only way to be masculine.
Okay, perfect.
You have to add to your indirect, direct. Character has two sides. We all know character as be a good person, don't lie, don't cheat. That's a good character person, right? But we also know the person who shows up early and stays late, works his butt off, does all the stuff he's supposed to do. That's character too. But you could be that guy and not be a good person.
Yep. 100%.
And you could be a good person and not be that guy. We want both.
Right.
We want both. So there's two sides to character. And so there's two sides to masculinity.
Perfect.
So you can't just be all spiritual and not get anything done. You got to have a job. You got to provide for your family. The Bible says if you don't provide for your family, that's a bad thing. So there's two sides to this coin. So we're not saying stop being indirect. Go be good at what you do. I tell guys all the time, the guy who's at the top of the field is going to have the most influence. And then you can talk to them about God. Yeah. So we want you to be good at what you do, but we also want you to be good at being who you are and being who God's called you to be.
Yeah.
Todd, I think we've come to the end of our podcast, which is so sad. But next time you're in town, I'm going to grab you for sure.
Dive into.
It's just so powerful, and so we deeply appreciate it. Yep. Again, folks, I can't tell you enough. Please get hold of Todd's book, The Lost Treasure of Man's Masculinity, Audible version. because it'll bless your socks off you. But I wanted to thank you so much for your time, really, and we look forward to, and we forgot to mention, Todd's going to be speaking tonight at the Legacy Men's Conference to us men, about 900 guys, so we're looking forward to that as well, tremendously.
Yeah, we really appreciate just your transparency and everything as well as men. I think that that's definitely something that they originally struggle with, right? Like you said, some men will walk in and out being vulnerable and not knowing if they should come back and do that again. And I think it's the manliest thing you can do is surrounding yourself with men that you can entrust that type of information with. Because I think that's one piece too, right? Is men expect for other men to value them for what they don't tell them. Right? Is it's like, I just want you to see all the great stuff that I do, because I want you to like have some set value for me when I walk away from this conversation. And I actually have learned, and I love you for this too, Gary, is that when you open up more, that's actually the real treasure, right? That you're talking about is that you have a relationship that you can depend on, that they would be there for you no matter what. They would be able to tell your family the real man that you are.
Amen.
And so I thank you for that. And then mentorship, I got to mention it to anyone who's out there that's in this spiritual fitness gains and you're feeling good about yourself, go out there and start mentoring somebody, because that grows you spiritually as well.
It does.
So yes, definitely always surround yourself with individuals that are wise and that you're looking to achieve the goals that they've achieved. And then don't forget to go out there and reach out and help someone else.
Let's go.
Amen.
Yeah, wanted to thank y'all again here for joining the Legacy Men's Podcast, where we learn how to live and leave a godly legacy. Todd McIntyre, thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless you guys.
Thank you, Todd, so much. 1,000 times. Thank you so much.